And now it's time for another episode of Lumpy Pear's Adventure, Episode 7. The sun had just started coming up, and Lumpy woke up. He knew that he had a big adventure ahead of him. So he gathered his things and he opened the old smelly chest, took out the book, and took out the sword, and he saw some red stone dust down the bottom of the chest. And immediately he thought, oh my goodness, I almost went on my adventure without a compass. He had the map that he got from the villager, but he didn't have a compass. And so he took all the redstone dust and went to his crafting table. And then he put down 4 pieces of iron and made a compass. He was ready. He had food. He had his sword. He had the map and the book. He was ready to go. So he opened the door and headed north to this mysterious village. How far it would be, he had no idea. Hopefully it wouldn't take more than a week, he thought. A week's journey there, yes?
Why does he need to go there?
To know what the book says. Because the book is in a different language, and he's hoping he could find an answer about all the things that have been happening. So he started walking, and he walked and walked and walked. He walked through deserts. He walked through forests. He swam across rivers. And then he came to a tall mountain. It was so tall that there was snow on top. He looked down at his map and tried to figure out where he was. And then he walked to the top of the mountain, thinking, maybe I could find the city. When I'm up at the top of the mountain, I can look. And he got to the top and he looked out, and it was still nothing. It was getting late. And he thought, I don't want to go down a mountain in the dark. I might fall.
Did he forget his torch?
Well, yeah, he had some torches, but he wanted to save his supplies. And he was getting tired, so he thought, I'm going to dig a hole here and camp out for the night. I'll just kind of bury myself. Because he didn't have a door, he didn't have anything, Yeah. And so he started digging, and before too long, he didn't even get very deep, and it was dark. And all of a sudden he heard a noise. And then all of a sudden he noticed that a block had disappeared. And then all of a sudden he heard a noise again. It was very scary.
What did it sound like?
And he turned around and he saw a black figure with purple eyes looking right at him. And he stared at it. He was so afraid he didn't know what to do. And he heard it scream, a scary scream. And then all of a sudden, it disappeared. And then he heard a sound again. And all of a sudden, he got hit in the back of the head really hard. And he fell on the ground. And he turned around and it was an Enderman. It was what he heard about. Oh, the sword, when he got hit, fell to the ground. He couldn't reach it. And then he said, I'm going to run away. And so he started running and running. And the Enderman, he couldn't see where the Enderman was. And then all of a sudden he stopped. He said, maybe I lost him. But he didn't. The Enderman appeared right behind him again and hit him. And so he ran again. I need to get my sword. So he ran to grab the sword. And all of a sudden, something appeared in front of him. It was a very big Enderman. Twice the size of the other Enderman. And he had a crown on his head. Lumpy froze in fear, and the eyes of the Enderman King glowed brightly, and the Enderman King opened his mouth, and the scariest sound you ever heard came out, and all of a sudden, a big, almost like a purple fireball flew out of the Enderman's mouth and hit the Enderman right behind Lumpy. It sent the Enderman flying off the mountain. Lumpy was frozen in fear. He knew that Enderman had to have been killed. But why would the Enderman King kill an Enderman? And why is he in front of me? The Enderman looked down and stared right into Lumpy's eyes. And his mouth didn't open, but he talked to Lumpy in his head. And he said, "Lumpy, I am the exiled king of the Endermen. I have come to you because I sense you have great power. I have been banished from my kingdom by an evil Enderman, and I rule the Endermen, but they will not have me. And so they have all become evil and are under a deep spell. I don't think I will ever get my kingdom back, but I need your help. I am wounded."
What does wounded mean?
Hurt. A spell has been cast on me, and I am in pain.
What does pain mean?
The sword that you have is enchanted. It is a sword of healing. Lumpy, take the sword and bury it into my chest. Lumpy could not believe what he was hearing. All he did was stare at the Enderman. The Enderman's mouth didn't even move. The whole time, all of these words were coming into his head. Lumpy couldn't even imagine what was going on. Is this real? Am I dreaming? He thought. He didn't even say the words. And the Enderman said, "No, Lumpy, you're not dreaming. Take the purple sword that you have and plunge it into my chest."
What does plunge mean?
Just push it right into him. Lumpy was shaking and he picked up the sword. He was about to kill the Enderman King, or so he thought. But he did just as the Enderman King had asked, and he pushed the sword as hard as he could because the skin of an Enderman is so tough. And the Enderman King opened his mouth and screamed in pain. And the purple that was on the sword turned into a cloudy dust glowing, and it surrounded the whole Enderman. All purple. And the king was screaming, "Ah!" And the sword flew out of the Enderman King. And the Enderman King fell on the ground, the cold, snowy ground at the top of the mountain. Lumpy looked at the sword where it fell, and he saw that it was a diamond sword, that it must have been enchanted. The Enderman King lay on the ground and groaned quietly. It must have been an hour. And the Enderman King slowly rose and spoke again to Lumpy's mind. Lumpy, you have healed me. I thank you. I will try to protect you whenever I can. But know that most Endermen are not friendly and will attack you. And so I give you secret knowledge. Find a pumpkin and carve it and put it on your head whenever you see Endermen. You will become invisible to them and they will not see you. Also, Lumpy, know that Endermen do not like water. We will die in water. And also, of course, we do not come out in the daytime. Go to the land that you seek, and you will find great answers with that book. I can read it, but I must go, for the Endermen know that I am here. Farewell, Lumpy. Thank you. I owe you my life. And with that, the Enderman King disappeared. Lumpy could not believe what just happened. He decided he'd had enough adventure for one night. So he finished digging his hole, climbed in, and pushed some dirt right above his head, and he was sleeping just like a little mouse in a hole. And he fell asleep. It was actually quite warm in the little hole on the top of the snowy mountain. He was comfy cozy. He wasn't afraid anymore. As you might think he might be afraid, he wasn't. He had a nice, calm feeling that came over him, and he fell asleep. That morning, Lumpy woke up, pushed out the dirt. It was beautiful. He could see it was even clearer now. The cold didn't even bother him. He was way too excited. There was something very special going on, and he wanted to know. Lumpy looked around and found some rocks. And he built a column, a pillar, as a memorial for what took place there. And he took some wood and he wrote a sign, and he marked it on his map. On this spot, Lumpy, Pear became friends with the Enderman King. And then he went down the mountain and continued on his way to find answers in this mysterious village that he'd never heard of. As he walked, he thought about Trouble, the little puppy dog that wags his tail and wags his head at the same time. He had hoped that Trouble was out of trouble. Of course, he didn't know, but he knew that the villagers would take care of the puppy. And he made sure that they knew that he had to stay on a leash, otherwise he would get into trouble. As he walked, he thought about what happened, and he held the diamond sword in his hands. It was such a beautiful sword. And he knew that it was strong and powerful, that it would help him if he ever got into trouble. Real trouble, not the doggy trouble. He walked and walked, and he could see buildings off in the distance. Could this be the village that he hoped for? As he came up closer and closer, and he looked down on his map, there were 3 rivers that went almost in a Y shape where this magical village was. Or at least he thought it was magical, whatever it was. But that wasn't the village on the map. In fact, it looked like he had only gone halfway. Maybe. He couldn't tell. So he stopped at the village and found an inn. An inn is a place kind of like a hotel. And he spoke to the villager. And he said, "Do you have any rooms?" And the villager said, "Ah." And the villager was shaking his head, yes. So Lumpy checked his pockets to find anything he could give him for a room. He still didn't have any gold, and he wasn't going to get rid of his diamond sword. He offered the villager chicken. The villager said, "Ah." And then he said, "I got some iron." So he handed him a block of iron. And the villager said, "And he showed him a room. And Lumpy laid down. So Lumpy said his prayers and laid down. And had happy thoughts about puppy trouble. And fell asleep knowing that in the morning everything would be okay, even if there was danger ahead. The end of episode 7. Bum, 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 bum. What's your question?
He just woke up.
Huh?
He just woke up.
He woke up, yeah, but he had to walk down the mountain, which was huge, and then he walked to a village. So he made it off the mountain and down to a village.
He made another friend.
Yeah, he's making lots of friends, huh?
Yeah,